Inside Lacrosse here in snowy Philadelphia. We caught Albany Drexel. Albany walks away with the 15-8 win. I'm Zach Babos, this is Matt Kinnear. Bit of an odd game, I guess, between the snow and a lot of surprises. I think everybody came out here waiting to see the 2015 debut of Lyle Thompson. He came out, he got into the game early, I think had a goal maybe early, but by about the early second quarter, he kind of slips off to the side of the field with an injury, goes to the locker room, doesn't come back out in the second half. And really the story of the game at that point kind of became the blossoming of this young offensive group that Albany's got this year that I think everybody was kind of waiting to see what they got. And they got something if they poured in 15 goals and really at times looked really effective even without Thompson on the field.
Yeah, it was a great showing for this young Albany offense. Seth Oakes with a great game, and Connor Fields really took, to quarterback in this offense after Lyle went down. You could really tell kind of in the first half they were a little bit tentative, but then once they kind of were forced to be put in this position of leadership, Connor Fields took the ball and he ran with it, and really successful day for them.
And on the other side of the ball, I was really impressed by Albany's defensive effort. I think that personally, Blaze Reardon may be one of the most underrated goalies in the country. He is a phenomenal shot stopper. He is consistent on his outlets. He's a rock solid back there for this team. And generally, their defensive effort was great. I mean, by the end of the game, they wound up giving up 8 goals. But for a long time there, I think Drexel was sitting on only about 3 or 4 goals. The Albany defense really held it down. I mean, what were you seeing from that end today?
Yeah, Blaze Riordan, it really starts with him. This Drexel offense really wasn't able to penetrate this defense at all. So focusing on outside shots, and Blaze was able to gobble all of them up. It's really amazing what Blaze is able to do with the new defense in front of him, be able to communicate with them, especially, with Albany not having a lot of full field time this, lead up to the season here. The communication was great by them.
And, a little bit of extra spunk, I guess you could say, in this game, too. A lot of laundry flying today, a lot of chippiness, particularly towards the end. I mean, some of that's just kind of the way that there's a little extra juice running in there early going into the season. But, it was kind of impressive to see the way both teams didn't necessarily want to back down. But Albany particularly really, every time they got up, they played energetic. I think it was a very impressive start for Albany at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, Coach Scott Maher, he mentioned right at the beginning of our talk after the game, there's an undisciplined game on both sides, Drexel and Albany. He was really proud of the way that his teammates kind of stood up for each other. If one guy got taken down, someone else was there to, to kind of get in the middle of them and really have the teammates back there. Coach Maher, a big proponent of starting the season later. He really started out, we were walking off the field and he said, this is ridiculous that we're playing in these conditions. He said the sport is irrelevant by playing in this winter mess that we're playing in right now. He said it's flip-flop game. It's not a, work boots game is how he put it. He's wearing work boots on the sideline of the day today. This winter weather was just ridiculous.
I got to agree with Coach Martha. I think I had hand warmers, about 5 or 6 layers on, and I still was freezing out here. It took me a while until I could kind of feel my hands to work my camera today. I mean, you can probably see snow building up on our camera lens right now as we're trying to talk. This is just a blanket out here. We saw guys slipping and sliding everywhere. I mean, it makes an interesting kind of picturesque game, but this is not ideal weather for lacrosse today. But all in all, I guess, Albany walks away with the win. Coach Morrow, hopefully, he doesn't really get much respite going up back up to Albany now, where I believe their next game against Bryant may be dealing with the snow issue again too. But so inside Lacrosse out here in the snow, we're going to now deal with our own potential treacherous trip back to Baltimore and check in on some other games.
Stay warm, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Welcome back to the IL Newsroom. I am Terry Foy, joined by Jeff Shannon. And obviously, Lyle Thompson's injury, one of the big storylines of the weekend, one that we will keep you up to date on all week at Inside Lacrosse. But there was a lot of action around the world of college lacrosse, aside from Albany's season-opening victory over Drexel. And Jeff, kind of starting with the storyline of the snow. You couldn't get away from it anywhere you went. And it really did seem chronologically like it started in Baltimore because of what we saw out of Loyola and Holy Cross. And it seemed like when you look around how rough of a day it was for particularly the Baltimore and Maryland-based schools, it emanated maybe a little bit from that. Let's start with Holy Cross's historic win over Loyola. I just got to say, Judd Lattimore is 2 games in as the head coach of Holy Cross. His team is 2-0. They've beaten 2 fellow Jesuit universities, and they are now 1-0 in the Patriot League with a win over a number 8 ranked Loyola Greyhound squad, 13-12. What'd you see in this game?
A lot of snow, Terry. I saw a ton of snow. It's I hate talking about the weather, but it's one of those things you just couldn't avoid this weekend. There was snow from Maryland, all the way up to Pennsylvania, all the way up to New York. And I think out of all the games I watched, this one was probably more affected by anything. There was snow from the opening face-off all the way through the game. You get a sense that it was really affecting the teams, how they approached it. Holy Cross seemed to adjust to it much more quickly and take advantage of the situation and get their a major win in the Patriot League for them. You really saw. I think that the key run for them was between the second and third quarter. They went 7-1, and to the point where Loyola had to once again switch out their goalie, going to Grant Lamone, the freshman, halfway through. Something that happened to them against Towson earlier in the week, and a big win for them early in the week. So it's interesting how that played out. You're seeing Coach Lattimore, someone who I've gotten to know on the recruiting trail over the last few years, one of the rising assistants, finally taking over as the head coach here, really working his attack. Guys like Clay Harmon, Kevin Lux, Sean Wilkinson, taking advantage of their situations. All of them at least had a hat trick today. I think Harmon finished with 5 goals in this game, and really took advantage of the snow, one-on-one matchups, and just Loyola's inability to adjust, especially defensively, to what the situation lied. Loyola finally got going again in late in the fourth quarter, made a run there, but just wasn't enough. And Holy Cross walked away with 2 big victories in the last 2 weeks. This is a huge one for them. But you can't forget they also beat Fairfield in the opening, their first game of the season as well. So really hot start for Holy Cross so far.
It's interesting. This was one of the games where I think there was the most conversation about whether or not they were going to switch to an orange or a yellow ball. I believe they stuck with the white one all the way through, and it was interesting to me. You mentioned, obviously, the goalie performances. Loyola only ended up with 7 saves on the day. Michael Ortleb was able to make 13 saves, go a little bit over 50% for the goaltending for Holy Cross, and obviously that was going to be a significant victory. A game that wasn't as impacted by snow was one that took place in New Haven, Connecticut, and it was the number 14 ranked Yale Bulldogs coming away with an 10-6 win over the Maryland Terrapins, who came in ranked number 7, coming off of a dominating performance against Navy last weekend. This is a game I was able to watch a little bit more closely. Kyle Devitt was live tweeting it for Inside Lacrosse, and it kind of seemed like Conrad Oberbeck really had himself a day offensively. It also seemed like Charlie Raffa violated a fair amount early, never really got into a mix or a rhythm offensively or at the face-off X, and as a result, it seemed like Maryland struggled gaining possession. And then also, it just seemed like one of those games where shooting woes. Both teams were really struggled by them, but at the same time, it was Yale that was able to overcome them a little bit more dramatically.
Yeah, you mentioned the shooting woes for Maryland. Their offense didn't look good at all, I thought. Again, not so much the talent didn't look good, but the movement didn't look good. A lot of shots.
Didn't look natural.
Yeah, I was going to say not natural. A lot of standing around, a lot of one guy dodging, trying to get open.
Yeah, we saw this a couple times, and to me, it's a little bit of a hallmark of an offense that's struggling a little bit. But a guy throwing back and then basically being trailed by the guy that he threw back to, and not dodging to anywhere dangerous. We just saw it a fair amount of times from Maryland.
Yeah, I was hoping with the change at offensive coordinator there, a shake-up, maybe we'd see something new out of it. A lot of the same problems that follow them, I would say late in last season, and kind of last few seasons you see them tail off towards the end. They're kind of starting with those problems. So you mentioned some of the shooting. Matt Rambo, 1 for 5 today. Joe Lacasio, 0 for 5. Jay Carlson, 1 for 5. Just not a really good day for the guys that need to be scoring for them. Only 14 shots on goal, 34 shots total. They need better from their offense.
And continuing with the trend of a rough day for the state of Maryland, Johns Hopkins goes down to North Carolina. Another game not impacted by the snow, and the number 4 ranked Tar Heels pull out a win that, it ended up being 13-11, but it felt like they were in more control than a 2-0 victory throughout.
Yeah, North Carolina's offense looked strong. I mean, you really can't go wrong with Joe Sankey, Bitter, Goldstock. But Goldstock had a really nice day today. Had a hat trick. You look at Hopkins, you still get the sense that they were working out the kinks in their offense. Ryan Brown kind of seemed to have one to put the game on his shoulders. Finished with 3 goals, 3 assists, but he took 13 shots. That's a lot of shots and only 6 on goal. That's got to come in. You got to see some more contributions from other guys. I would say, especially from the first midfield. Connor Reed took more shots today than he has so far this season, but went 0 for 4 shooting. Will Stanwyck went 1 for 6 shooting. Would like to see his accuracy be a little bit stronger there. One guy, and again, I think you're going to see him get incorporated into the offense as time moves on, but Shaq Stanwyck went 2 for 2 shooting. They're really going to need to figure out how to utilize him properly. They've been running him out of the midfield a little bit, trying to get him time, trying to get Wilkins Dispute time. Dispute has been good. He went 1 for 2 days shooting. But they really need to figure out just their rotations right there. And for North Carolina, this was a good game for them. Again, they're up 4-0 right now. Their offense looks great. I don't really see a ton of holes from them so far. Once they get into ACC play, that's when the challenges are really going to come, but looking strong so far.
Yeah, and I kind of share a similar thought about Carolina. Even though they're 4-0 and this is a significant win and they, beat a traditionally good program in UMass, it feels like they haven't been tested yet. And I don't know whether that's because, even this Johns Hopkins game, because it was in Carolina, they had the field switch and it wasn't on television. It just didn't feel like as big of a stage as you would expect from this game in general, but more so just in terms of the way that Carolina makes its name for themselves this season. I think that coming in, there was an expectation that they were going to play their way into the echelon that includes clearly Notre Dame and Denver, possibly Duke. But, and they've done everything that they've been asked now, but it feels like they've got more. They've got more to do, more to give.
You're waiting for them to get that first punch in the face. It was Mike Tyson had an old saying, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face once. UNC, they haven't had that yet. You're waiting for that first challenge, that first adversity to hit them, and then how do they respond? Who are the guys that are going to step up and say, hey, okay, we're having some troubles here, but we're talented, we know we can win. I want to see that game from them before I put them in the same level as Denver, Duke, and Notre Dame, who I think are really the cut above right now.
Yeah,
and Syracuse. I don't want to forget that. Syracuse as well.
Right, Syracuse still having a big test this weekend, hosting Army at 7 p.m. on Sunday night. Notre Dame and Denver coming away with convincing wins over pretty decent opponents in Air Force and Michigan. We wanted to kind of just move on relatively quickly, briefly touch on the Patriot League play got started. We already talked about the Holy Cross win over Loyola at length, but it's a crazy league. It's a crazy league not just because it starts its league play on February 21st, but because the games are just insane in and of themselves. And that's what we saw to start the day with an early start for BU at Lehigh. Lehigh able to pull out a 1-goal win.
Yeah,
that game feels like it took place yesterday.
I was going to say, from what we've been watching, I like what BU is doing. It's been very impressive. I know Lehigh's been slow to start this year, losing some of those guys early.
Who are back.
They are back, and that played the difference in this game, I thought. Just that little bit of competitive edge over top of a young BU team. The most impressive kid, I thought, watching them in terms of someone I want to see more of is Hayden Ruiz, a freshman midfielder. Did really well today. Scored 2 goals, but also took the shot that was sort of the last shot of the last opportunity for Boston University. A lot of talent there. You figure Lehigh just experienced them out of a victory, but it really sets up some interesting mid-level competition in the Patriot League with some of these scores, some of these games like today.
Yeah, and so moving on, Bucknell 8-7 victors over Navy, and it was a game that it kind of seemed like Navy had a little bit in control early, right?
Yeah, Navy had it in control early. They want to say they were up at least 5-3 going into the third quarter, and then they just got hit with the worst penalty in the world. Brady Dove got a face-off. It was tied 5-5, got a face-off, scored a goal. Navy was up 6-5. They do a stick check, gets an illegal stick called on him. They're down 3 minutes, unreleasable. The goal wiped out. Wiped out. Bucknell makes their run, builds the lead, and then walks away with the victory. You just want to... Being a face-off guy, I got to understand where your stick is in a situation where those things might happen. Someone steps on it, something happens to it within play, the pocket gets adjusted, it can happen. But have that penalty there for a team that desperately wants to get some momentum going, it's a killer. And you really, if you're Navy, you say this is an opportunity. We needed this opportunity, and it hurts. It's got to hurt. Dove that happened to them, and Navy in general, that this was an opportunity to beat a very competitive team in league, and they couldn't do it. Kudos for Bucknell for getting that win out. It was a tough win. But really, when you look at the storyline, it's Navy's loss, and it hurts.
And to wrap things up, Colgate had significant control over Lafayette, but were only able to secure a 12-10 victory. A win is a win, especially in this league, especially in this weather, especially this early in the season. But you got to be, I guess, somewhat pleased if you're Lafayette that you were able to come back late in the game. So, G-Shen, we've talked about some of the best teams in the country. We've talked about some of the craziest things that happen. We've talked about the Patriot League already gotten underway. And we touched on the fact that there's still a great game tomorrow night, 7 p.m. in the Carrier Dome. Another one that we want to touch on, Richmond hosting Marquette. It was a game that we were originally planning to attend. Not certain that that's going to be able to happen now because of the weather. But is there anything else in this de facto third weekend of the college lacrosse season that caught your attention?
Well, you mentioned the Army-Syracuse game tomorrow. Suddenly Army's the favorite in Patriot League, I would say. Tomorrow's game, regardless of what happens, if they win, it's a nice strength of schedule victory, but at the very least, they're setting themselves up to suddenly be the favorite with Loyola having that loss. And speaking of the Patriot League with Loyola, the Holy Cross, it's a nice win in their back pocket moving forward. I mean, when you're looking at how important scheduling and strength of schedule is, you've got to win against the number 8 team in the nation. If Loyola, maybe this is a hump for them, maybe they continue to play well. That's huge. It's very interesting. These games in general in February remind me a lot of games in college basketball in November.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of interesting matchups, but what's going to matter, what doesn't matter, it's going to take some time to figure that out moving forward.
Well, we hope that you were able to enjoy this college lacrosse weekend as well as possible, probably locked inside, and hopefully live streaming the games, watching other people play lacrosse in conditions that were much colder than the one that you were in. Hopefully that was the way that you enjoyed this video, and we will see you next weekend.